Hello, welcome back. Nicole Holland here. Super excited that you are with us today. I am super stoked because MC Laubscher is a wealth strategist, educator, and financial freedom fighter, and he is here with me today in the virtual studio to help us. And so let me tell you a little bit about him. MC is the president and CEO of Producers Wealth and creator and hosts the popular and top-rated business and investing podcast, Cashflow Ninja. His purpose and mission is to help producers and creators create, protect, and multiply their wealth in any economy without getting ripped off by Wall Street and their governments. Everybody loves that, right? MC challenges existing societal belief systems and misinformation around concepts such as money, savings, investing, wealth, and retirement. He has shared these ideas as a guest on several podcasts and is a regular contributor to Grant Cardone TV, Steemit, Medium.com, LinkedIn Pulse, and Bigger Pockets. I'm super excited, as I said, to have him with us. So welcome here today, MC.
Thank you so much for having me on, Nicole. Honored to be on your show and looking forward to our discussion.
Woo, me too. Awesome. So we're going to be talking about how my listeners can create, protect, and multiply wealth outside of Wall Street in any economy through your perpetual wealth multiplier strategy. I'm super excited to hear about this.
Yeah, very, very excited to be sharing it. It's money is a strange thing. It's one of those things that's part of our everyday life, right? We take care of ourselves and our bodies and our health, and we understand that, right? We eat right, and we train, we work out, we sleep, and that's the same thing with relationships. We know we have to give, we have to be open to receiving and growing it, and money kind of is a third wheel that kind of ties in because it does affect every single part of our life. And it's also an area that we're very private about. Usually when you do challenge existing beliefs or ways that certain people have done certain things, the first step is to get a little bit of defensive too, right? Because it's almost feeling like somebody steps into your space, right? Yeah. So, I'm excited to be talking a little bit about it because there's really truly three parts about money. And as I mentioned, with health, you have to eat properly, you have to exercise, and you have to recover, you have to sleep. That's going to maximize your results. With money, you have to create it, you have to protect it, and you have to multiply it. So I think people overcomplicate things a lot, especially when it comes to money. I mean, look, we have many diets out there and fads. I'm not going to say with health we don't, but especially with money, there's different terminologies used, and it sounds very confusing to a lot of people out there. So we like to keep it as simple as possible to share just the strategies that we teach.
Fantastic. So before we dig into this, because I'm just going to look at my notes here. I was thinking about you. You provided me with so much awesome information, and I just want to make sure that before we dig in, that my listeners are really in a space of truly hearing what you have to share, because it is such a sensitive topic for so many people. And so to kind of get us grounded before we start, can you explain where our mindset needs to be in order to really hear and get the most out of what you're going to be sharing over the next 50 minutes or so?
That's such a great question, because that's where it all starts. And I think the school systems that we have, the education systems that we have, is very much focused on industrial age and even the agricultural age thinking, right? Because the current school systems in their current shape and form was created during the industrial age, these Prussian modeled schools. So, I mean, they were created to generate and create factory workers and good, obedient factory workers. That's why we still have bells ringing, telling us when we need to take breaks, or change classrooms, or eat our lunch, right? And why I'm mentioning that is because the scarcity mindset really is taught And we actually really take on that mindset from the current school systems. And what I mean by scarcity is it's a world of not enough. It's a world of competition, right? You can't cooperate when you're writing tests because that's called cheating. Well, in the real life, I collaborate and cooperate all the time because there's enough for everyone to go around. Ties into the mindset. So when it comes to money too, the same kind of thinking has been passed down. We have a scarcity mindset. We always think about reducing and cutting back first, right? Instead of expanding, because we think it's a world of not enough. It's a world of scrimp and save and cutting up your credit cards and reducing and cutting out those lattes at Starbucks. And all of a sudden we think that is going to make us wealthy, or that's going to be the secret, right? And this is also shared in many different books. And, The Millionaire Next Door is probably a book that your listeners have all heard from. That's kind of the mindset behind it. That's a scarcity mindset. I think if you open your mind and you understand that, especially in the time that we live in now, there is an abundance of opportunities. There's an abundance of ways to collaborate, of generating income. And there's an abundance of opportunities to serve and provide a value for people, which expands our business and our opportunities to produce and create and also earn more money. So I think once you make that switch from scarcity to abundance, it's a massive switch. And I think that the thing that plays into that too is the control factor. I think scarcity is when we don't have control over certain things, right? We immediately go into protective mode, kind of like in our little huddle, which is just what we humans do. We're an interesting species, where once you do have control over your money, you do know how to produce and create and expand yourself. You know how to collaborate. You see the world in different ways. That abundance mindset switch in. The scarcity mindset is also the consumer mindset. It's more focused on consuming, spending, scrimping, saving, cutting back, where the abundance mindset is rather than, look, how do I generate more income? What more opportunities are there for me to create wealth? What other stream can I add? I have this one business. What's a stream that I can add to that business, maybe through a different product or service, or maybe a potential strategic partnership? It's all about that. So I think that's the framework that we have to look in as far as mindset. And it's very important to pick your role models properly, because there are many, many different books out there that talks about scrimping and saving and cutting up credit cards, as opposed to living life wealthy now, today, instead of hoarding, cutting up your credit cards, scrimping and saving for 30 to 40 years.
So good. Such a great way to kick this off. And so let's get into it. So we're listening with an abundance mindset. And, I kind of feel like even when we do our personal work, if we come from that traditional system of not enough and all those years of teaching of not enough, even as we hit our objectives and we are living in this more of abundance mindset and life, there are still ceilings that we tend to hit. That's like, okay, that's enough. And then our little, something in our brain takes us back down to what we used to believe and what we used to know. And so I think as we're shifting our mindset, we will be challenged at times. So do you have any quick, in case during this session or beyond, but especially as you're going through, because you talk fast and you got a lot to cover, if we do wind up sort of going, oh, wait a minute, that can't be true, is there any kind of quick hack that you can help us know to take us back into the more positive?
Yeah, switch your thinking to a world of wants rather than needs. Everything is based on wants in life, right? The car that you drive, it's the one that you want. Otherwise, we would just have a tin with 4 wheels. The house where you live in, right? The school that your children go to, the partner or spouse that you're dating. It's not just the one that you need that, all right, I'll just settle for this person, No, It's the one that you want. So in every area of our life, we look at the stuff that we want and we go for it. But when it comes to money, for somehow, and especially financial planning, the way that it's in its current shape and form, we look at it, okay, what do I need? What do I need in 30 or 40 years to not be on the street? It's rather than, no, what do you want? What do you want your life to look like? And I think that switch, if you continuously just flip it over, especially when it comes to money, what do you want rather than just what do I need to survive? I think that already is going to switch your mindset and have you see the world a little bit differently, especially when it comes to money.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's get going. What is the first step? Where should we start?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we have to realize is what's holding you back and why are people struggling, right? So the first step is you have to understand why we are in a certain situation. And we are on a broken planet, really. If you look at the statistics, the savings rate is horrific. Right now, the savings rate in the United States is under 3.1%. So people are saving very, very little of their own money. A lot of them don't have 6 months even saved. A lot of them cannot cover a $500 medical emergency, right? So there's a lot of statistics that might scare people out there. And there's a reason why collectively we have a broken planet, we have a broken society when it comes to money. So we have to look at it first and say, okay, what is the problem? Because if we don't understand what's the noun, what's the problem, then finding a solution, we're just throwing darts up in the air. There's no board, right? So I would say the first step is you have to understand that there's 3 types of education. And by the way, before I say that, a lot of people say, well, struggling financially. There are very high income earners that struggle financially. And there's 3 types of education. There's academic, there's professional, and there's financial. Now, a lot of people have academic education. A lot of people have professional education, but they don't teach financial education in schools. There's no financial freedom class in university or in high school, right? So a lot of it is just really math and maybe some basic accounting. So what's financial education? Knowing the difference between an asset and a liability, knowing the difference between good debt and bad debt. Again, the scarcity thing, stay out of debt, right? Knowing and understanding the role that taxes play in our lives and how to mitigate and navigate taxes, right? Massive, massive wealth destroyer. Knowing our environment, our country's $21 trillion in debt. Social Security, Medicare, all those things are underfunded. We're looking at close to 120, I think, last time I checked, it's around about trillions of dollars of underfunded. What does that mean? This is the environment that we're in. So we have to be cognizant of that. We have to be cognizant that when money's being printed, people talk about money printing, right? Like during the last financial crisis, they call it quantitative easing. It's money being created. The money supply increases. Well, what does that mean? Inflation happens. There's a silent tax, so the value of your money's eroding. That's what I mean about financial education. We touched on mindset. Data is massive. People have to understand that everything that you know about money, most of it, comes from Wall Street, a very powerful lobbying group. They also spend a lot in marketing and advertising on media programs. And of course, these media companies on which they advertise in are all listed on the stock exchanges, and mutual funds buy their stock, and their board of directors sit on each other's board. So, it's just what is, and that's where the information comes from. So you have to understand that a lot of it benefits Wall Street, and their business model basically exists out of, I want your money. I want it often. How about every other week, right? For 401k or IRA contributions. And that they want to keep it as long as possible, 30 to 40 years. And they want to give back as little as possible. And as slowly as possible. That's kind of the business model. So you have to understand where it comes from to understand the different sides of the coin of how to navigate your environment and how to position yourself so that you can also do what the institutions do, the banking and financial institutions, because they know how to play the game. So, so I'm a big believer of modeling. Coming back from a sports background, I just found the best players, copied what they did, and I already saw I saw big changes. So when it came to money and investing, I take the same approach. I find the successful folks, what they're doing, and I copy them. So
let me just pause you here for a
yeah.
moment, because I just want to make sure that everybody is with us, because you talk very fast and there's a lot that's going on right now. So
right.
If I understood your position, the first step is to understand the current circumstances, both for your own personal financial situation as well as the world around you. Is that summing it up?
Yeah, exactly. Understanding that. So I would say, to summarize so far, what I've said is the education is important to understand that we most of us have academic and professional ones, but not so much financial education. So we have to invest there in ourselves and increase our financial education. And then also from a mindset standpoint, we touched on that a little bit, the mindset of abundance versus scarcity. Knowing the data that we get is not correct. And knowing that we have to go look for data. Well, who has the correct data? Role models, other folks, because if you study what successful people do, what they do, and I'll finish with this, is they don't do the same thing as everyone else, right? The very small group of people that have figured it out, when you look at them, the really, really ultra wealthy families, they don't do the same thing as everyone else. They don't only also do things a little bit differently. They do the complete opposite. Where
Can we dig into that then? What the specific steps? Because what I would love to have happen here during the remainder of our time together is for my listeners to actually have a tangible step-by-step process of what they can do as soon as we're done to get on that track.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Absolutely. So So when I mean when I mean they do the opposite, there's a couple of things that I talk about where, for instance, if just saving money and handing it to a financial advisor, and they're saving it for 30 to 40 years, they focus on cash flow. They focus on cash flow now, today. So the step-by-step stuff, to give you an overview of what they can do, is the first thing is change from a plan or a financial plan to a strategy. A strategy is, the financial plans are very focused just on products, buying a mutual fund, investing in this. Those are golf clubs. It's not the golf swing. If somebody tells me, hey, MC, you can go and play Augusta National, and you can go and play in the Masters, and you can either take Jordan Spieth's swing or you can take his golf clubs, I would take the swing rather than the golf clubs, where a lot of people focus on the golf clubs. Now, they might be really nice golf clubs, but do you know how to use them? And I think that's the whole thing about investments and vehicles, is they're just tools. So I just want to touch a little bit on the strategy first, and then I'll give like practical steps that people can do. So from a strategic point, here's what we teach. You're your number one asset. No one else. Again, to the swing and the golf clubs. The golf club is not the asset. It's the person's swing and how he swings the golf club. We look for things around us and outside of us rather than within ourselves. So remember that you're the number one asset. Number two, your biggest investment should be in the asset that you are, increasing the value of that asset to the rest of the world. And number two, in relationships. And then investing in things that you know around you, your business. If you know about real estate, you do that, and that you learn about. Having control over your money at all times, not handing it to someone else. This is a life skill. This is not a skill that we farm out. I think that's also something that's misunderstood. When I get up in the morning and I have smelly breath, I know how to brush my teeth. That's a life skill. But when I need a root canal, I go see a dentist. Managing money is a life skill. It's not something that you should hand over. And the other thing is alignment and focus. I talked about your goals, your vision for your life. What do you want it to look like? Start with the end in mind. Being efficient. Where's your savings? Where's your assets position? Efficient income. And I'll explain in a second what I mean by that. Protecting your money. The very wealthy folks are more concerned about protecting money against taxes and so forth than anything else. Risk management is a big one, political, economic. market, and then also institutional risk, dollar maximization, same dollar doing many different jobs at the same time. So can we save a dollar and can we invest it? That's what the wealthy do, and I'll share that when I get to specifics. Momentum, when you're not losing money through the markets, and you're compounding that money and compounding that interest and then also multiplying it, now you're generating wealth. And the other thing is also, I touch on relationships. People's very important to help you. A team around you, you as the CEO is still responsible, but you have a team around you that help you with stuff. I equate that to, almost having a personal trainer or a dietitian that help you. You still have to work out. You're the guy responsible for that, but they're there to help guide you, support you, and motivate you. So practical steps. Let's start on some practical steps. We focus on cash flow, not the accumulation phase, because cash flow allows us to live wealthy today, not 30 or 40 years from now. So we figure out a cash flow target. And Nicole, one of the things that we do is, for instance, we have 4 different levels of financial success that we teach. The first one is security. Then we have independence. Then we have financial freedom. And then we have legacy, financial legacy. That's kind of and significance. That's when you get to the point of now what, right? The first thing for security is building up savings. You have to structure your finances in a first way and clean up your own house. And there are information out there. I mean, I wouldn't go into setting spending rules or just saving money first that comes in. Pay yourself first. Every dollar that comes into your own household, put a percentage of that away. A minimum of 10% is what I tell people. Here's what very wealthy people do. They save between 40 to 50% of their income every year. And I know, like, wow, it's challenging to do that, but it can be done. So pay yourself first, and then look at other ways where there's some inefficiencies, right? And this gets into a lot of weeds and technical stuff, and this is something that we teach as well, different ways to go through all of your items in your household of where you can become more efficient. So from a financial security standpoint, pay yourself first, put some money away in a sacred account, that cannot be touched. That's there for medical emergencies, for other emergencies, and for opportunities. That's when you start to get financial security. There's other stuff there too, having all of your insurance in place, whether it be property and casualty, whether it be homeowners insurance, whether it be car insurance, whether it be an umbrella insurance policy, whether it be life insurance. All of those different things have a solid foundation in place. Then we look at a cash flow number, and this would be for the next level, which is economic independence. So if your living expenses, for instance, is, and I'm just going to use round numbers, $10,000 a month, right? Then you know that if you can generate $10,000 of income from an investment, then you're economically independent because your passive income now takes care of your living expenses. So I would say that, and that's what that kind of level means. And I'll get to how we get to that in a second. Financial freedom, there's a different formula that we have. We times that number by 1.5 and then we double it because, again, wealthy people save 40 to 50% of their income every year. So we want to maintain that habit and have money to capitalize on opportunities and have it for emergencies. So those are the levels, and there's different things that you have to do in those levels. But I think if you're struggling financially and at the end of the month now, you don't have enough money left, or you're worried or you're stressed, the first thing that you have to do is pay yourself first, because most people pay everybody else around them first and then save what's left over.
So something that I think is common, but you're the expert, so absolutely correct me if I'm wrong here. But something I think is really common is that when we hear pay yourself first, or we say pay yourself first, many people think with what, right? Because they've already paid their vendors, they've already paid all of their expenses, and so how do you help somebody get out of kind of a cycle or a habit of not paying themselves first and have them pay themselves first? Is it just an instant like, oh, well, then, take out credit, or, oh, well, just the next thing you get in, pay yourself first and forget about so can you break that down a little bit? If somebody is not already doing these ideal, doesn't already have these ideal structures in place, how can they start getting there?
Yeah, there's a couple of areas that wealth is being transferred. So the first one is taxes, right? And if you're a W-2, that's just going to come out. So there's not a lot of flexibility there. But then there's debt service. This is credit cards, debt, and so forth that people have. So we look at, and this is one thing that I've learned from a mentor of mine too, because we're all about cash flow, increasing the cash flow in our own house and monthly cash flow. So when you're paying off credit cards too, a lot of people will attack them in certain ways. We look at a cash flow index, right, where we divide the outstanding amount by the payment. And then usually by increasing the cash flow, you want to get rid of higher payments. So for instance, a mortgage is going to have a very low cash flow index, where maybe a high interest credit card is going to have a very high one. So you want to get rid of that one first. So there's ways to efficiently pay off debt. So and restructure debt, maybe, tying into how you pay for a home. If you have a home, for instance, that you can refinance. A lot of people take out 15-year mortgages, which is exactly what the banks want you to do because it increases their cash flow, right, over time. It decreases their risk because they have skin in the game. So the larger the mortgage you have, the bigger risk they have. So decreasing the risk and so forth. So we have people spread it out over 30, increasing their cash flow. So maybe that's something they can look at to take care, for instance, of the debt. That's one way. And then, of course, there's lifestyle spending. Now, I don't want to scrimp and save my way to wealth, but there are things that are productive ways of spending things, and then there's things that are not productive. And this is unique to every individual. For instance, if you like a massage every Friday, and that refreshes you, or on a Monday and allows you to do better work to increase your income, that might not be something that I would cut away, because that positions you to produce and create, right? So, but you have to look at lifestyle too. I mean, you have to understand how much money's coming in, and then look at the items in your list. What are some efficiencies? What are some of the things that you can do better? Once you have that figured out, the lifestyle, then you can pay yourself first, and knowing that at the end of the month, you're not going to owe someone money that you don't have the money to pay for. So, and it also makes you think differently, because if you pay yourself first, well, how do I pay some of the other bills? Well, is there something else is there a different responsibility that I can take on at work? If you're a business owner, is there an extra line that I can add to my business? Creativity starts to roll, and you start to look at a world of how can I and what I want, rather than just getting by and just what I need. Yeah. So, and then touching base on where do we go from there? Once you figure out the inefficiencies within your personal economy, within your business. This is in businesses too, by the way. Just think of all the memberships that we have to have these days. Do we even use all of them? I personally did an audit for my business of all the subscription. And there's a ton of overlap. And there was stuff on there that I was paying for that I didn't even use, right? So there's inefficiencies in every household that can be improved on, and in every business. Once you have that figured out, I mean, the two big things that I keep hammering on is your mental capital and your relationship capital, because that eventually is going to determine your financial capital. Picking a passive income number. Let's just stick with the $10,000 a month. Now we look at where do we park our savings and where do we invest in? And this is different for everyone else. So what we do is we have different systems and different buckets. So for instance, we have a savings account, and we use a strategy where we actually use insurance products, high cash value life insurance, to save it in, because money is guaranteed. There's guaranteed on the yeah, there's guaranteed on the principal and the interest. There's dividends that can be earned. These are not guaranteed, but these companies and these carriers that we've structured it with, which is mutual insurance companies, not stock companies, they've been around for almost 200 years. They've paid out these dividends over 100 years consecutively through depressions, crashes, recessions, and more. So we feel comfortable in the safety of them, that they're in there with all the guarantees. It's private. There's asset protection for business owners and investors. And as part of from a legacy play, the insurance product also provides a death benefit, which helps with transferring money from one generation to another generation. So the strategy, we call it the cash flow banking strategy, because it's truly an account where you take the responsibility of and the banking function back into your own life. It's also called the infinite banking strategy. So we save in this vehicle. The other thing that it's allowed us to do too is access our money through a policy loan using our cash value that accumulates in them as collateral. And then we use that policy loan and the money that we've accessed to invest, for instance, in real estate. Now, you need to educate yourself on real estate, and if this is something that you want to invest in, like I said, you stick with your strengths. Most of my clients, they're business owners, so they invest back in their businesses. They save it in these banking policies, these cash flow banking policies. They invest back into their business. They grow and expand their business. They self-finance stuff in their business. Like I financed part of my recording studio with one of my own policies, and then I invest a lot back into my own business. But there's also an opportunity to invest in other assets like real estate, for instance, and then the proceeds gets redirected back into our policies. So there's an infinite flow of money into the policies where it's safe, it's liquid, it's growing, also tax deferred and tax-free distribution wise. So it builds up tax-free in these policies, and we can also leverage it to use it in our own growing our own businesses and ourselves, and then also other investments. So that's just an example of integrating it. We call it asset integrations. I like to have my cake and eat it too. So I like to save and invest, and this allows me to do both. It's just a more efficient way of doing it. So that's what I mean when I talk about efficient savings and efficient asset positioning from a tax perspective. And then I also had mentioned in our discussion, efficient income. Now, there's a book that some of your listeners might have heard about. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad from Robert Kiyosaki. And it's one of the all-time best-selling personal finance books out there. It's still, I think, one on the bestsellers list. And this book, I think, was released in 1997. And Robert Kiyosaki talks about a cash flow quadrant. And basically what he means, if you're listening to this, if you're driving, if you're working out, or you're watching on YouTube, if you look at a quadrant, on the left-hand side of the quadrant, there's an E and an S, and on the right-hand side, there's a B and an I. Now, the left-hand side of the quadrant, the E stands for employee, the S stands for self-employed, and on the right-hand side, the B stands for business owner, and then the I stands for investor. Now, from an efficient income standpoint, the least efficient income and the most highly taxed income is from the E and the S, the employee and the self-employed. And the most efficient income is from the business owner that owns the business and works on his business, not in his business, and of course the investor. So when you invest in real estate, now all of a sudden, you start to generate income from the I quadrant. So it's just a more efficient way of earning it. So we like to be efficient of how we save, where we save. We like to, as I mentioned, eat our cake, or have our cake and eat it too. And then also be efficient with our assets positioned. And then also be efficient from where our income comes from. So that's kind of just an overview of practical steps of walking it through it. But I think if people are overwhelmed, just take a deep breath, because I'm from South Africa, and from Africa we have a saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
That's great. And you actually have put together a video training series at yourownbankingsystem.com that also gives more details about all of these things. Yeah.
Yes. So we will go much more into depth about efficiency in all of those areas, things to do, the strategies that we use, and so forth. So whether you're an employee and a high income professional, or just an employee, I mean, we help everybody. I think everyone can find benefit of this, whether you're a business owner or an entrepreneur. So I deep dive into it and go into much more detail. So if you're interested in what we teach, it's the complete opposite of what's out there. And it's just stuff that we've learned from people that we've studied. I always joke and say, I didn't come up with this myself. I just found the most successful people and copied what they did.
Awesome. So if we can sort of recap, but also add in anything we haven't had time to cover, what would you say are the first, or not the first, but when this is over, when people when our interview is done, when our masterclass is done, what 5 things would you like my audience to do to get on the track to building more wealth, protecting it, and growing it?
I would say the first step is to figure out where you want to go and have a vision for your life. Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there, right? So you have to be clear on what you want your life to look like, where you want to go. Then I would say the second part of that then is understand the different types of education, understand the data that's out there. Because if the data was right, 90% of people wouldn't struggle financially. And then try and find the correct data and the correct role models, right? Because again, if we followed just what everybody else is doing and we do the herd and we engage in groupthink, we're just going to have the same results as everyone else. So figure out exactly where you want to go, then understand why people struggle, understand what the problem is. And then I would say number 3 is start to form a framework of I would say, and this framework should be out of what the strategy would entail, right? And I would say a framework of principles, your personal principles, your philosophy, because a strategy follows and is based on principles and beliefs and philosophy. It's not the other way around. Because you want to make sure that the stuff that you want to pursue and how you want to invest is also aligned with your principles and values, right? There's some folks, for instance, that's very much against the GMO stuff, the food. So you don't want to invest in GMO companies, or, you would rather invest in companies that are doing things responsibly that's aligned with your principles and values. So be very clear on that. Then I would say, take inventory, number 3. What are we on? Number 4? Yeah, number 4. Take inventory where you are, everything, look for inefficiencies. And number 5 is structure the plan. Set up an account, pay yourself first, learn more about other asset classes that you want to invest in that you could potentially integrate. And of course, no man or woman is an island. We all need people to help us with this, coaches, mentors, and so forth. So find the right coaches and mentors and have them help you on your journey.
Fabulous. That's great. Is there anything that we haven't covered yet that you're like, you know what, I think I need to share this too? This is a takeaway I want to leave people with.
Yeah, I talk about legacy quite a bit. Because we're here for a short time on the spinning bowl of dirt before we go somewhere else. And I think when we're here and we create and produce for others, and we try to make our family better, our community better, and try to contribute to the little bit that we have to offer or what we have to offer to the world, I think it's great to pass on those principles and those values to our children or the next generation or family as well. So a big part of the stuff that we talk about and plan is we're going to create and produce, we're going to protect, we're going to build up this wealth and multiply, but we also want to leave a legacy for the next generation. And the way to do that is not only handing money and stuff to people, because by the way, on average, that only lasts 18 months, right? Before the next generation just blows it all on cars and houses and vacations and all the fun stuff, but also transfer intellectual capital, knowledge, transfer on principles and values. I think that's very, very important when it comes in, when it comes to all important areas in your life. So I like to think of it kind of as a holistic approach to wealth creation, because it brings all of the parts in together, because this is just one part of it. It is a very important part because it provides so much pain and it affects all of the other areas of our lives, right? The schools that our children, for instance, go to, the healthcare that we can afford for ourselves. It impacts a lot of stuff. So, but you have to see it as a whole and have a holistic approach to it.
Thank you. That's great. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming here. I know everybody got so much. I know I'm scribbling notes. I got like pages here, and I'm going to have to go back and listen again. But that is the beauty of having this on the podcast, that you can go over it and over it and over it as many times as you want. So fantastic. MC, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was a blast being on.
Awesome.